At a council of war on the 18th, Sibley and his officers agreed they'd attack the garrison at Fort Craig, take the fort, and live off the Yankees' rations and supplies. On the morning of February 21st, General Sibley sent an advance party to Valverde Ford, where the Rio Grande was low enough to cross, just 5 miles north of Fort Craig. Colonel Canby's scouts tracked this movement, so Canby deployed a mixed contingent of infantry, cavalry, and artillery to head the rebels off. When companies from the 2nd and 4th Texas Mounted Rifles arrived near the eastern banks of the river, they found the Federal advance guard waiting for them, denying them access to the river. That meant the rebels could not get water for their canteens and horses. The battle started off as an artillery duel, but both sides were out of each other's range, so the initial barrages were ineffective. Reinforcements from the 4th Texas arrived and gave the Confederates the numerical advantage, but Federal reinforcements from the fort were on their way. General Sibley was drunk and spent the morning in an ambulance. At noon, he relinquished command to Colonel Thomas Green of the 5th Texas Mounted Rifles. At 2 p.m., Green ordered Company B of the 5th Texas, the Lancer Company, to make a cavalry charge at the Union extreme right flank. When the Lancers charged toward the river at the Federals, they thought they were attacking an inexperienced company of New Mexico volunteers. Instead, the rebels came up against a company of Pike's Peakers, and the Colorado volunteers poured gunfire into the Lancers and repulsed the charge. The only Lancer charge of the American Civil War failed. When the remaining Lancers made it back to the rebel lines, they dismounted, ditched the hog pokers, and rearmed themselves with pistols and shotguns to continue the fight as infantry. By late afternoon, the Federals had the advantage on the field. However, Canby did not want to make a frontal assault on the Confederate center, so he opted for the rebels' weak left flank. Canby redeployed one of his artillery batteries closer to the enemy's left and brought troops out of reserve from the west bank to the east, including Kit Carson and the 1st New Mexico Infantry. Colonel Green wanted to stall the Federal attack on his left, so he sent infantry to charge the Union's right flank again, this time on foot and away from the Pike's Peakers. This attack was met by heavy gunfire by the 1st New Mexico. Kit Carson then led his troops in a flanking movement that poured enfilading fire into the attackers from 2 directions, thus repulsing that charge. Canby sent reinforcements to bolster his right flank while continuing to press towards the enemy's left. This left the Federal center weak and exposed, and Green pounced on the opportunity. 750 Confederate soldiers charged at the Federal center in 3 waves. The first wave forced the Federals to fight hand-to-hand with the rebels. The second wave made the Federals start to retreat. The third wave turned the Federal retreat into a rout, with the Confederates taking the field and both sides of the river at Valverde Ford. The Confederates lost 36 men killed in action and 150 men wounded, while the Federals lost 68 killed, 160 wounded, and over 200 desertions from the New Mexico volunteers. One of the Union soldiers killed at Valverde was Lieutenant George Bascom, the young officer whose attempt to capture Cochise the year before had united the Apache Diné in a war to expel all foreign invaders from Apacheria. Canby ceded the field to the rebels, but his defeated force hightailed it back to the safety of Fort Craig. That made the Confederate victory at Valverde completely hollow, since it failed to dislodge the Federal garrison from the fort. If the rebels couldn't take Fort Craig, they couldn't eat, and they would have to move on further into New Mexico with the Federal garrison at their backs.